Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for June 3rd to 9th, which was also the Library-a-thon, which I was co-hosting. This week I read 5 books, I watched 2 shows, and I listened to 2 books. First this week I picked up a book I had been meaning to get to, but hadn't until that point, because that was one of the Library-a-thon challenges, and that was From Here to Eternity by Caitlin Doughty. If you were familiar with the YouTube channel Ask a Mortician, you do not need any more introduction to this book. If you aren't, you're missing out. She's a hella cool lady. This book is based on Caitlin's experiences of traveling the world and witnessing different funeral and death rites. As she remarks, every society thinks every other society's death practices are at least weird, if not disrespectful and gross. So it was interesting to see different perspectives. I also really enjoyed her writing, especially when she was describing this one friend she has who seems like the type of weird friend that everyone should have. If you are at all interested in this topic, this book is a must-read. Because it came in as a hold at the library, and this is the Library-a-thon after all, I read Herding Cats by Sarah Anderson. This is the 3rd in her collection of Sarah's scribbles, and I just find her work so relatable. It made me laugh multiple times in the break room at work, which is what you want from something like this. And as always, there's a bit of an essay at the end where we get to learn more about her between comics. It's quick, fun, relatable, and a good time. Plus, all the covers have these velvety bits on them, which makes for a very excellent tactile experience. From something light to something dark, I picked up Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Sadawi. This fulfilled the challenge of reading a book set in a country I had never read a book set in before. This is a Frankenstein retelling in Baghdad. Sounds fantastic, right? This was actually on my top 5 books to pick up this year list, and unfortunately I didn't get along with it as well as I had hoped. Firstly, in whatever blurb or release I first read or saw about this, it said that the body was being constructed as some kind of protest against the war, and that just wasn't the case. In fact, the character that puts the body together doesn't really seem to have a reason for what he does, and is about to go put the body parts back where he found them when the body mysteriously disappears. For such a short book, there were way too many characters and very few that I actually cared about. The timeline in this book is also very strange, so I was constantly trying to figure out if we had gone back in time, and if so, why. I'm glad I checked this off this list, but I struggled with this book the most over the week. The next book I picked up was Spellbook of the Lost and Found by Moira Fowley-Doyle. I had originally picked out a different book for the challenge of a bookish book, but someone else was already reading it, so I picked this up off my library TBR instead. This has to do with some girls whose diaries go missing and they find this spell to bring back what they've lost. The spell ends up displacing and finding different items from all the people around this small Irish town. And we jump perspectives between a few different girls who are all at this celebration where the spell took place. And many of them are just trying to figure out what's going on. For the most part, I really enjoyed this. The mystery element kept me going, and there were a handful of queer characters, which means that there was a queer romance. One problem I did note, and I assume this is the problem of the American publisher, is that the language in this book made it feel like this wasn't set in Ireland. Characters talked about playing soccer instead of football, they used flashlights instead of torches, one character talked about finding aspirin instead of paracetamol. The language was so scrubbed that this could have been a small town in the States, and given I was very excited to read a book from a country I used to live in, that disappointed me. That aspect aside, I did enjoy this book. The plot and characters were intriguing, and I did enjoy the magic aspect, so if you're looking for something witchy, pick this up. My final physical book this week was My Cat Yugoslavia by Pashtim Stotovci. This one was recommended by one of the clerks at my library, which fulfills the challenge of reading a book recommended by somebody at the library. This book takes place in Finland and Kosovo and follows the narration of an immigrant son and flashbacks of his mother. The son is queer, Muslim, and lives with a boa constrictor, even though we learned that he had a terrible fear of snakes until his father beat it out of him. He also picks up a talking cat at a bar one night, and they have a relationship for a very long time, even though the cat is a homophobic jerk. There's lots of talk of what it was like to immigrate to and be a refugee in Finland, which is something that the author went through, as well as talk of the customs his mother went through when she had an arranged marriage. This book was weird. I considered looking up the symbolism behind the snakes and the cats in this book, but honestly I'm just going to assume they were internalized repressions that were more interesting in this format than if we had a human stand-in. If that's wrong, and it totally could be, that's fine. I don't claim to be able to decode everything every author has put down on a page. This book dealt heavily with family and how war and circumstances tore this particular family apart. If you want a weird read with some queer aspects, you're welcome. At Tuesday Night Dinner Club, I walked in while my friend was watching a rerun of a CSI episode I haven't seen in a decade, but still remembered most of. You know, the one where Nick and Warwick flip a coin to see who gets to go on a case, and then Nick ends up kidnapped and buried underground, and then Grissom uses that whole, like, hand on my hand and his truly remarkable, terrible childhood name of Poncho to, like, calm him down before he almost gets him blown up. When I was in university, it seemed like there wasn't an hour of the day where you couldn't find CSI on some cable channel. Like all well-watched crime shows, it got spin-offs: New York, Miami, and Cyber. For some reason, NCIS has 2 spin-offs, New Orleans and LA. And Law & Order had 5 spin-offs: SVU, Criminal Intent, Trial by Jury, LA, and True Crime. Anyway, after that walk down memory lane, we continued on the 2nd season of Survivor. And we're now down to the final 3. Based on the fact that one of them is undeserving, and I know about the car curse, in which every survivor who has won a car has not gone on to win Survivor, I have already figured out who is going to win, and I can only assume that it's based on jealousy that the jury votes the way they do. Did? Will? It already happened, but I haven't seen it happen, so what verb tense is that? Feel like I need a Dark Star Media bat symbol right about now. This week I listened to Keep Her Safe by Sophie Hannah. I picked this book at random from the audiobook selection in my library because you're supposed to pick a book that you had never heard of before. It was about a woman who runs away from her family in the UK to a spa resort in America to sort out her life, and on the way stumbles into a murder case that had supposedly been closed a decade ago. This one was fine. I enjoyed the various characters and the different voice actors gave them great personas. I cared about what happened to the characters and dangers and how the stories wove together. I wasn't going into this looking for the best thriller of all time, so I wasn't disappointed. Manage your own expectations and you can read a lot of run-of-the-mill things, and more easily ignore when writers ignore how the justice system works. The sun just has no idea what it's doing today. This week I also listened to Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI by David Grann. This was my book that was meant to be out of my comfort zone because I knew while reading it I was going to be very mad about colonialism, and I was right. So very angry. I pity whoever was near me on the bus while I was listening to this because I was giving murder eyes every other paragraph. Basically, there was a time when the Osage were the richest people in America because the plot of land that the government moved them to happened to have oil under it and they owned it. These head rights could only be inherited and not sold, so someone started a plot to kill off a bunch of these tribe members so that these fortunes could be inherited. Yes, this actually happened, and it was a case taken up by the agency that eventually became the FBI. What is also fascinating is there are a ton of unsolved murder cases from this time that the author actually found potential answers to. The hateful, racist language used by settlers at this time and quoted in this book made my blood boil. Do yourself a favor and take in this history lesson. Apparently, a movie is also in the works, and although IMDb doesn't have any of the casting for native characters, Leonardo DiCaprio has signed on to play whoever ends up being the white male lead of this film. Let that sink in for a bit. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below on the way down in the comments. If you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. But until then, I have a stack of books to read for the Queer Lit Readathon, which is happening now. Bye!